They say success is the best revenge, but silence. Silence is the deadliest weapon of all. Liam Calloway thought he had won the game. He thought destroying Sienna Mercer in front of New York's elite was his crowning achievement, the necessary sacrifice to climb the corporate ladder. He watched her walk out of that gala with nothing but the clothes on her back, convinced he'd never see her again. He was wrong. 18 months later, she didn't just come back. She walked through the doors of the one room he couldn't control, holding hands with the man who owned the building. This is the story of how a broken heart became a billion-dollar nightmare. The champagne in Liam Calloway's glass cost more than Sienna Mercer's monthly rent, a fact he made sure to mention 3 times within the first hour of the Sterling & Company Winter Gala. The Cipriani Ballroom on 42nd Street was a sea of black tuxedos and designer silk. It was the kind of room where the air smelled like expensive cologne and old money. Sienna adjusted the strap of her dress, a modest navy number she'd bought off the rack at Macy's. She felt like a smudge of dirt on a pristine marble floor. "Stop fidgeting," Liam hissed, his voice low. He didn't look at her. His eyes were scanning the room, hunting for someone more important. "You look nervous. It makes me look weak." "I'm not nervous, Liam. My feet hurt," Sienna whispered back, forcing a smile as a waiter passed with a tray of escargot. "And you've barely spoken to me all night. I thought this was supposed to be a celebration of our 3 years together. That's what you said in the car." Liam finally turned to her. His face, usually handsome in a sharp, boyish way, looked cold, hard. It was a look Sienna had seen frequently over the last 6 months, ever since he started working directly under Marcus Sterling, the CEO. "Sienna," he sighed, the sound dripping with condescension. "Look around you. This isn't a date night at Applebee's. This is the big leagues. I need to network. I need to be seen. And frankly," he paused, taking a sip of his champagne, "I need to be seen with someone who fits the part." Sienna's stomach dropped. What is that supposed to mean? Before Liam could answer, the crowd parted. Walking toward them was Tiffany Sterling, the CEO's daughter. She was everything Sienna wasn't: tall, blonde, dripping in diamonds, and wearing a custom Versace gown that fit her like a second skin. Tiffany didn't walk. She glided. "Liam," Tiffany purred, ignoring Sienna completely. She placed a manicured hand on Liam's bicep. "Daddy is looking for you. He wants to announce the new VP of Operations before the dessert course." Liam's face lit up with a hunger Sienna had never seen directed at her. "I'm ready, Tiff. I was just handling some loose ends." Sienna froze. "Loose ends?" "Liam." Sienna's voice trembled. Liam turned back to her, his expression devoid of empathy. He reached into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, a check. He tucked it into the purse she was clutching. "It's over, Sienna. It's been over for a long time. You just refuse to see it. I'm moving up, the life I'm building. You don't fit in it. You're quaint, small. I need a partner who understands power." He glanced at Tiffany, who was smirking. "Tiffany and I have been seeing each other for 3 months. Tonight is our public debut." The room seemed to spin. 3 months. While Sienna was editing his reports till 3:00 a.m., while she was ironing his shirts and reminding him of his mother's birthday. "You're joking," Sienna managed to choke out. People nearby were starting to stare. The humiliation burned her skin. "Don't make a scene," Liam warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "That check covers your rent for 3 months. Consider it a severance package for your time as my support staff. Now please, leave. You're embarrassing yourself." Tiffany laughed, a light tinkling sound that felt like glass shattering. "Security is at the north exit, sweetie. It's faster." Sienna looked at Liam one last time. She waited for a crack in the armor, a hint of regret. There was nothing, just the arrogant tilt of his chin and the triumphant gleam in his eyes. He felt he had won. He had shed the dead weight and secured the prize. Sienna didn't scream. She didn't throw her drink. She simply nodded, a strange calmness washing over her. "Enjoy the view from the top, Liam," she said softly. "It's a long way down." She turned and walked away, the sound of her cheap heels clicking against the floor drowned out by the applause as Marcus Sterling took the stage to announce Liam Calloway as the future of the company. 6 months later. Liam Calloway sat in his corner office overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The plaque on his desk read, Senior Vice President. Everything he had wanted was his. He had the apartment in Tribeca, the Porsche 911, and Tiffany Sterling on his arm. But he also had a headache that wouldn't go away. "Where is the Q3 projection report?" Marcus Sterling barked, storming into Liam's office without knocking. The CEO was a terrifying man, silver-haired, red-faced, and prone to throwing staplers. "I'm just putting the finishing touches on it, Marcus," Liam stammered, minimizing the window on his laptop. He had been staring at a blank Excel sheet for 4 hours. "It was due yesterday," Marcus growled. "Your analysis has been sloppy lately, Liam. The acquisition of the brutalist architecture firm in London, that was a disaster. You missed the zoning laws in the fine print. Cost us $4 million. It was an oversight by the legal team. It was your proposal." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. "When you were a junior analyst, your reports were flawless. Poetic, almost. You predicted market shifts before they happened. That's why I promoted you. That's why I let you date my daughter. But lately you're mediocre. Fix it, or Tiffany won't be the only thing you lose." Marcus stormed out. Liam loosened his tie, sweat prickling his hairline. He opened his drawer and pulled out a bottle of scotch. He poured a drink, his hands shaking. He knew why his work had slipped. He knew exactly why. For 3 years, Sienna hadn't just been his girlfriend. She was his ghostwriter. Sienna, with her quiet demeanor and degree in frantic literature, had an uncanny ability to synthesize data and weave it into compelling narratives. Liam would dump raw numbers on the kitchen table, and Sienna would stay up all night turning them into the flawless reports Marcus loved. She checked the legal footnotes. She researching zoning laws. She polished his brilliance until it shined. He had convinced himself he didn't need her, that he was the genius and she was just the typist. But without her, he was drowning. "Damn it," he whispered, downing the scotch. His phone buzzed. It was Tiffany. "Dinner with the Vance Group tonight, 8 p.m. Don't be late. Daddy says Dominic Vance is in town and looking to buy out a logistics firm. We need to impress him." Liam groaned. Dominic Vance. The name was a legend on Wall Street, a recluse billionaire who made money in tech, biopharmaceuticals, and shipping. Nobody knew much about his personal life, only that he was ruthless and had a zero-tolerance policy for incompetence. If Liam could land a deal with Vance, the botched London acquisition would be forgotten. He could secure his place in the Sterling Empire forever. He checked his reflection in the glass. He looked tired, but he could fake it. He always faked it. The restaurant Le Cuckoo. The atmosphere was suffocatingly high-end. Liam and Tiffany sat at the best table waiting. Tiffany was scrolling through Instagram, bored. "Is he coming or not?" she snapped. "I could be at the gala at the Met right now." "He'll be here," Liam said, checking his Rolex. "Vance plays power games. He's making us wait." 10 minutes later, the maitre d' approached their table. He looked flustered, sweating slightly. "Mr. Calloway, Miss Sterling." "Yes," Liam said, straightening his jacket. "Is Mr. Vance here?" "Mr. Vance is in the private dining room upstairs," the maitre d' said. "He requests that you join him there. But he has a condition." "A condition?" Tiffany scoffed. "Who does he think he is?" "He said—" The maitre d' hesitated. "He said he prefers to do business with people who pay attention to details. He asked me to give you this file." He handed Liam a simple manila folder. Liam opened it. Inside was a copy of the Q3 projection report Liam had been struggling with earlier that day. But it was finished. Completed. The analysis was brilliant, sharper than anything Liam had written in 6 months. It predicted a market crash in the logistics sector that Liam had completely missed. At the bottom of the page in red ink was a single note. "Your math is off, Liam, just like it was in the London deal." S. Liam's blood ran cold. S. "What is it?" Tiffany asked, trying to grab the paper. Liam pulled it away. It wasn't possible. Sienna was gone. She had moved back to Ohio or wherever people with no ambition went. She couldn't be here. She certainly couldn't be involved with Dominic Vance. "Mr. Vance is ready for you," the maitre d' said. Liam stood up, his legs feeling like lead. He took Tiffany's arm. "Let's go." They walked up the winding staircase to the private mezzanine. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn back. Sitting at the head of the mahogany table was Dominic Vance. He was younger than Liam expected, maybe late 30s, with intense dark eyes and a scar running through his left eyebrow that gave him a dangerous edge. He wore a black suit that cost more than Liam's car. But Liam didn't look at Dominic. He looked at the woman sitting to Dominic's right. She was wearing a dress of emerald green silk, backless, daring, and utterly sophisticated. Her hair, once frizzy and tied back in messy buns, was now sleek, falling in glossy waves over her shoulders. She wore diamonds around her neck, real ones, heavy ones. She was reading a menu, looking bored. As Liam and Tiffany approached, she looked up. It was Sienna. But it wasn't the Sienna who cried over a check in a ballroom. This woman had steel in her spine. She placed a hand on Dominic's arm, a gesture of intimacy, of ownership. Dominic covered her hand with his own, interlacing their fingers. He looked at Sienna with a mixture of adoration and respect that Liam had never shown her. "Liam," Sienna said, her voice smooth as velvet but cold as ice. "Tiffany, so glad you could make it. Dominic and I were just discussing your performance reviews." Liam's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Close your mouth, Calloway," Dominic Vance said, his voice a deep rumble. "You're catching flies, and we have business to discuss, specifically the business of why my fiancé thinks you're a fraud." Fiancé. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Liam finally managed to close his gaping mouth, but the blood had drained from his face, leaving him a ghastly white. Tiffany, oblivious to the deeper currents, narrowed her eyes at Sienna. "Sienna, what are you doing here? And who is this man?" Tiffany's tone was a mix of haughtiness and genuine confusion, her gaze raking over Dominic Vance with a flicker of reluctant interest. Dominic chuckled, a low, dangerous sound that sent a shiver down Liam's spine. "Dominic Vance at your service, Miss Sterling." "And this," he said, pulling Sienna's chair closer to his and kissing her temple with a casual intimacy that felt like a punch to Liam's gut, "is my fiancée, Sienna Mercer Vance. She prefers to go by Sienna Vance now." Sienna offered a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her gaze, however, was fixed on Liam, and in its depths he saw not anger, but a cool, calculating assessment. It was the look of a predator studying its prey. "Please have a seat," Sienna invited, gesturing to the two empty chairs opposite them at the grand mahogany table. Her voice was steady, composed, entirely unlike the trembling whisper he'd dismissed at the gala. Liam and Tiffany sat, Liam stiff and disoriented, Tiffany radiating annoyance. "So," Dominic began, leaning back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Liam. "Let's talk business, shall we? You're here to discuss Sterling & Co.'s potential acquisition of Vance Logistics. A significant deal, Mr. Calloway, one that would consolidate Sterling's market share in North America and give you a powerful foothold in emerging markets." Liam cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "Indeed, Mr. Vance. Sterling & Co. is a titan in its field. Our due diligence has shown that Vance Logistics, while a solid company, could greatly benefit from our extensive network and capital." He tried to sound confident, but his voice cracked slightly. Sienna picked up a wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid thoughtfully. "And yet, Liam, your Q3 report indicated a potential market crash in the logistics sector within the next 12 to 18 months, a crash that would severely devalue any acquisition made at current prices. Are you proposing to make Sterling and Kobe lose billions? Liam's jaw tightened. That report was preliminary, based on incomplete data. My updated analysis shows a more stable outlook, a minor correction at best, certainly not a crash, as you suggest. He shot a venomous look at Sienna, trying to imply she was misinformed. Dominic raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Because the Q3 report I received, the one with S written on it, predicted a downturn with startling accuracy. It even detailed the specific indicators: rising fuel costs, increasing protectionist trade policies affecting shipping routes, and a burgeoning bubble in last-mile delivery services. It broke down the exact companies that would be most affected. Sienna nodded. My projections showed that if Sterling and Company were to acquire Vance Logistics at its current valuation within 2 years, it would be facing a depreciation of assets by at least 30%, potentially leading to significant layoffs and a tarnished reputation for mismanagement. Liam felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. That's absurd. My team's projections are far more optimistic. Your team, Sienna's voice was laced with a delicate sarcasm, or the team that used to be me. Dominic watched their exchange with a detached amusement, like a scientist observing an experiment. Sienna, Liam practically spat. You were my assistant. You compiled data, yes, but you never understood the strategic implications. You were never privy to the real discussions, the high-level decisions. Sienna leaned forward, her emerald dress shimmering under the dim restaurant lights. Oh, but I was Liam. Every late-night report I wrote for you, every economic forecast I drafted, every legal loophole I spotted in your proposals. It all gave me a deeper understanding of Sterling and Company's vulnerabilities than you ever grasped. You saw the numbers. I saw the chess game. She paused, then delivered the final blow. You think Marcus Sterling hired you for your strategic brilliance? He hired you because I made you look brilliant. And when I stopped, your true mediocrity became glaringly obvious. Tiffany finally spoke up, her voice sharp with indignation. This is ridiculous. Daddy would never hire someone based on a girlfriend's work. Liam is a genius. Dominic leaned forward. Miss Sterling let me disabuse you of that notion. Mr. Calloway's performance has indeed plummeted in the last year. In fact, his recent blunders have cost Sterling and Company millions. The London acquisition, for example. He looked at Sienna. Didn't you red flag that specific zoning issue in a report for Liam months before the deal closed? Sienna inclined her head. I did. I even drafted an alternative proposal that avoided the pitfalls, but Liam chose to ignore it. Liam stared at Sienna, a terrifying realization dawning on him. She knew everything. Every corner he'd cut, every detail he'd overlooked, every time he'd passed off her work as his own. This is a smear campaign, Liam accused, his voice rising. You're trying to sabotage me because I left you. Sienna merely smiled, a genuine, unsettling smile this time. Sabotage? No, Liam, I'm just revealing the truth. The market always finds a way to correct itself, and incompetence, especially at the highest levels, is always eventually exposed. Dominic clapped his hands softly once. Now on to the actual proposal for Vance Logistics. Liam, your company is heavily reliant on antiquated supply chain models. Our internal audits conducted by my fiancé show an alarming over-reliance on a few key fragile suppliers. And your IT infrastructure is frankly a patchwork quilt of legacy systems. The acquisition would be a liability, not an asset to Vance. So unfortunately, the answer is no. The word hung in the air, final and devastating. Liam's last chance at redemption gone. No. Liam repeated, the color draining from his face once more. But Mr. Sterling explicitly said this deal was critical. He sent me personally. Sterling & Co. needs this. Dominic simply shrugged. Perhaps Mr. Sterling should have sent someone more capable. Someone who understands the true value and vulnerabilities of a company like Vance Logistics. Someone like, say, my fiancé. Sienna took a sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving Liam. You see, Liam, while you were busy trying to erase me from your life, I was busy learning how to build one without you. Or rather, with someone far more astute. You think you understand business because you're dating a billionaire? Tiffany scoffed, finally finding her voice again. He's just using you for a fling, Sienna. You're still just a secretary. Dominic's expression hardened instantly. The amusement vanished, replaced by a cold, dangerous glare. Miss Sterling, let me assure you, Sienna is far more than a fling. She is the strategic mind behind the recent overhaul of Vance Corp's entire global logistics network, the very network your father wishes to acquire. She spotted the market trends, she designed the algorithms, she even negotiated the new international shipping contracts that put us ahead of the competition. He then dropped the bombshell, his voice devoid of emotion. And as for Sterling & Co. needing this deal, it's rather moot, isn't it? Because as of precisely 3 months ago, Vance Corp, through a series of offshore shell companies, all meticulously structured and managed by Sienna, I might add, became the majority shareholder of Sterling & Co. Liam felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. What? That's impossible. Marcus would never sell. Oh, he didn't sell directly. Sienna clarified, her voice eerily calm. He sold to a consortium of investment firms that, unbeknownst to him, were all subsidiaries of Vance Corp. He's been losing market share, making disastrous investment choices, and his brilliant VP of operations, she looked pointedly at Liam, was costing him millions. He needed liquidity, and we provided it, one small chunk at a time. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. He's still CEO for now, but he answers to us. Liam's mind raced, replaying every panicked phone call from Marcus, every frantic email about the company's dipping stock prices, every desperate attempt to shore up capital. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Sienna wasn't just dating a billionaire. She was his co-conspirator, his architect of revenge. So you bought Sterling & Co. Liam stammered the words, barely audible. You own Marcus Sterling. Not Marcus Sterling specifically. Dominic corrected, a faint smile returning to his lips. But his company, yes. Which means, Mr. Calloway, that you now work for us. For Sienna. We own you. Tiffany, who had been silently observing the exchange, suddenly let out a strangled gasp. No, my daddy wouldn't. He's Marcus Sterling, he owns New York. Sienna raised an eyebrow. Correction, Tiffany. He used to own New York. Now Dominic and I do. And soon, with our strategic guidance, Sterling & Co. will return to its former glory. But perhaps without some of its less effective personnel. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. Liam wasn't just losing a deal. He was losing his career. His status, everything he had built on the shaky foundation of Sienna's uncredited labor. He looked at Sienna, truly looked at her. The woman across from him was not the quiet, demure art history major he'd dismissed. She was a force of nature, meticulously groomed, sharp as a diamond, and utterly ruthless. The past 18 months hadn't just changed her appearance. They had forged her into something formidable. Why? Liam whispered, his voice cracking with a desperate plea for understanding. Why go to all this trouble? Sienna's eyes, once soft and loving, were now hard as polished granite. Because, Liam, you taught me a very valuable lesson. That in your world, kindness is a weakness. Love is a commodity, and loyalty is for fools. You taught me that to win, you have to be willing to burn down the entire field if necessary. So I did. Dominic placed his hand on Sienna's back, a gesture of silent approval. And she did it brilliantly. Now shall we discuss your immediate future at Sterling & Co. Mr. Calloway, I believe my fiancé has some very specific ideas on how to restructure your department. 1 week later. The boardroom at Sterling & Co. felt like a morgue. Liam sat at the polished conference table, his palms sweating against the cool wood. Across from him sat Marcus Sterling, his face pale and etched with disbelief. And at the head of the table, commanding the room with an unsettling calm, sat Sienna Vance beside Dominic. Gentlemen, Sienna began, her voice resonating with authority that made Liam clench his fists under the table. As the new majority stakeholders of Sterling & Company, Dominic and I have initiated a comprehensive operational review. The initial findings are concerning. She gestured to a large screen where a meticulously prepared presentation flickered to life. The first slide was a stark comparison of Liam Callaway's performance metrics before and after a specific date, the date of the Sterling & Company Winter Gala. As you can see, Sienna continued, prior to December 12th, Mr. Callaway's division consistently exceeded targets. His proposals were highly accurate and his strategic insights were unparalleled. Post-December 12th, we observe a precipitous decline across all key indicators. Project overruns, missed deadlines, inaccurate market forecasts, and significant financial losses such as the botched London acquisition. Marcus Sterling shifted uncomfortably. Sienna, I understand there's a history here, but Liam is a valued executive. These reports are just numbers. These numbers represent millions of dollars, Marcus. Dominic interjected, his voice firm. And they paint a very clear picture of gross incompetence. My fiancée has also provided compelling evidence of ghostwriting where a substantial portion of Mr. Callaway's brilliant early work was in fact performed by an uncredited third party. The room erupted into murmurs. Liam's face flushed crimson. This is outrageous. Liam finally burst out, standing up. She's fabricating this. She's doing this out of spite. Sienna merely raised an eyebrow. Spite, Liam. Or justice. Let's consider the London deal. Your report dismissed the zoning law issue as minor. My internal audit discovered the full legal brief, complete with a detailed analysis of the local ordinances, which would have prevented the loss of $4 million. This analysis, which I presented to you as a suggestion, months before the deal was signed by a S. Mercer, on a draft I found in your archived files. A cold clinical image of a document flashed on the screen bearing Sienna's actual signature, a clear and undeniable proof. I also have records. Sienna continued, her voice unwavering, of every single market analysis, strategic proposal, and investor presentation you claimed as your own. Each one has an identical counterpart in my personal archives dated before you ever submitted them. I kept everything, Liam. Every single word. Dominic then took over. Given this evidence and the clear pattern of underperformance, we have no choice but to terminate Mr. Callaway's employment effective immediately for gross negligence and intellectual dishonesty. Liam stumbled back, collapsing into his chair. No, you can't. I'll sue. I'll expose you. Expose what, Liam? Sienna asked, her voice chillingly calm. That you were a fraud. That your success was built on someone else's intellect. Your reputation is already crumbling. News of your miscalculations and the Sterling & Company takeover will hit the press within the hour. The market always sniffs out weakness. And as for suing, Dominic added, our legal team is rather robust. I suggest you consider whether you want to spend the next decade battling us in court, or if you prefer to quietly disappear. Marcus Sterling, defeated, simply stared at the table. He knew his own position was precarious, and challenging the new owners would be suicide. Clean out your desk, Mr. Callaway. Sienna said, her voice devoid of triumph, only a quiet finality. Security will escort you out. Liam felt the eyes of every person in the room on him. The same eyes that had applauded his promotion now watched his downfall with a mixture of pity and schadenfreude. He had walked into that gala feeling victorious, and now he was walking out stripped of everything. As he stood up, his legs shaking, he looked at Sienna one last time. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. She simply looked free. He left feeling victorious until she returned, holding hands with a billionaire. The headline would write itself. But the true story, the one Liam now understood, was that she hadn't just returned. She had orchestrated his entire undoing, turning his own weapons against him and building an empire where he had once left her with nothing. He had thought he'd broken her. He was wrong. He had only forged her into something stronger. The walk from the Sterling & Coney building to the curb felt like a funeral procession of one. Liam carried a cardboard box containing a stapler, a framed photo of himself shaking hands with a mayor who was now in prison, and a dead succulent. It was a pathetic summary of his rise and fall. He hailed a cab, his hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped his phone. He needed to get home. He needed to regroup. He needed Tiffany. Surely Tiffany would stand by him. They were a power couple. Her father was just angry. Parents got angry. She would talk him down. They would move to the Hamptons for a month, let the heat die down, and then start a consultancy firm. Calloway and Sterling. It had a ring to it. When he unlocked the door to the Tribeca penthouse, however, the silence was deafening. "Tiffany!" He called out, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. There was no answer. He walked into the master bedroom and froze. The walk-in closet, usually overflowing with Tiffany's designer chaos, was barren. Her clothes were gone. Her jewelry box was gone. Even the expensive silk sheets they had bought together in Milan had been stripped from the bed, leaving the mattress bare and gray. On the nightstand sat a single piece of heavy cardstock stationery Sterling family crest embossed at the top. Liam picked it up. The handwriting was sharp, hurried. "Liam, Daddy told me everything. He told me about the ghostwriting. He told me about the fraud, but mostly he told me about the bankruptcy risk. I can deal with a bad boy, Liam. I can even deal with a liar. But I cannot deal with a failure. You're radioactive. My PR team says being seen with you right now would damage my personal brand by 15%. Don't call me. The lease is in your name, by the way. Good luck with that." Tiff Liam crumpled the note in his fist. 15%, he screamed at the empty room. "I was your fiancé." He threw the paper ball at the wall. It bounced harmlessly onto the floor. The next few weeks were a blur of humiliation. The news of his firing didn't just make the industry gossip columns. It made the Wall Street Journal. The headline was brutal. "The Hollow Executive, How Sterling & Company's Golden Boy Was Just Fool's Gold." Every interview he set up was canceled at the last minute. Headhunters who used to harass him daily now sent his calls straight to voicemail. The Calloway brand was toxic. The final nail in the coffin came when his bank card was declined at a coffee shop. He checked his app. His accounts were frozen. A notification from the bank informed him that Sterling & Company was suing him for breach of contract and reclamation of bonuses paid under false pretenses. He had to sell the Porsche, then the watches, then the penthouse. Within 2 months, Liam Calloway, the man who had sipped champagne while discarding the woman who loved him, was living in a cramped studio in Queens, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, applying for mid-level manager jobs that he felt were beneath him, but for which he was now ironically unqualified. He spent his nights drinking cheap whiskey and stalking Sienna online. But she was ghost. No social media, no public interviews, just the occasional paparazzi photo of her and Dominic Vance getting into a private jet or attending a gala in Monaco. She looked radiant, untouchable. He realized then that the pain wasn't just about the money. It was the crushing realization that she was the magic. He was just the magician's assistant who thought he knew how the tricks worked. One rainy Tuesday in November, his phone rang. It wasn't a creditor, it was a blocked number. "Hello?" Liam answered, his voice raspy from disuse. "Mr. Calloway," a crisp British voice spoke. "This is Arthur Penhaligon representing the Vance Foundation. We have a proposition for you." Liam sat up straight. Vance, was this a joke? Or was this mercy? "I'm listening," Liam said, desperate hope flaring in his chest. "We are looking for a deeply experienced logistical analyst for a charitable initiative in Southeast Asia. It involves supply chain management for medical relief. It is not a glamorous role, Mr. Calloway. It is grueling field work, but the salary is fair, and Mr. Vance suggested you might be looking for a fresh start away from New York." Liam closed his eyes. It was a handout. It was pity, but it was also a lifeline. "Who approved this?" Liam asked quietly. "Dominic." There was a pause on the line. "Actually, sir, the directive came from the chairwoman of the board." Sienna. She was sending him away. Exiling him, yes, but also saving him from total ruin. It was the ultimate power move. She didn't hate him enough to destroy him. She pitied him enough to fix him. "I'll take it," Liam whispered. 2 years later. The heat in Quang province was not merely a temperature. It was a physical weight, a heavy, wet blanket that smothered the breath before it could even reach the lungs. Liam Calloway wiped a mixture of sweat and engine grease from his forehead with the back of a gloved hand. His shirt, a cheap gray linen that had once been white, clung to his back. Around him the warehouse was a symphony of controlled chaos. The roar of monsoon rain hammering against the corrugated tin roof competed with the shouting of forklift drivers and the beep of reversing trucks. "Mind the temperature gauges on pallet 4, Liam shouted over the din, his voice rough-stripped of the smooth-polished cadence of the New York boardroom. He pointed sharply at a young worker struggling with a hydraulic jack. "That's insulin. If the internal temp goes above 8 degrees, it's garbage. And if it's garbage, people in the Highlands don't get treated." "Move it gently." The worker nodded, terrified, but focused and adjusted the load. Liam stepped back, leaning against a rusted support beam to catch his breath. He looked down at his hands. They were calloused, scarred from a crate that had splintered 6 months ago and perpetually stained. The manicures of his past life felt like a memory belonging to a different species. 2 years. It had been 2 years since the Calloway collapse, as the financial blogs had gleefully dubbed it. His life in New York, the Tribeca penthouse, the Porsche, the tailored suits. The nights at Le Cuckoo felt like a hallucination. After the firing, the lawsuit from Sterling & Co. had stripped him of his assets. The public humiliation had stripped him of his network. He had applied to over 200 jobs in the States, from executive roles down to entry-level analysts. He was radioactive. No one wanted the man who had nearly bankrupted a legacy firm due to ego and fraud. When the offer came from the Vance Foundation for a logistics coordinator role in Southeast Asia, Liam had almost laughed. It was a grunt job. Hard labor mixed with high-stress supply chain management in a developing nation, but it came with a visa, a small stipend, and anonymity. He took it. He lived in a small apartment above a noodle shop in Da Nang. He rode a motorbike. He ate alone. And he worked. God, did he work. He worked until his muscles screamed and his brain was too tired to replay the look on Sienna's face the night she fired him. "Boss?" The warehouse foreman, a stern man named Hung, called out. "We have a problem at the gate. Private security. They are asking for the site manager." Liam stiffened. Private security usually meant trouble. It meant local corruption, or worse, another lawsuit from the States finally catching up to him. "I'll handle it," Liam said, grabbing his clipboard. He walked through the maze of crates, his heart hammering a rhythm against his ribs that had nothing to do with the exertion. He stepped out of the warehouse and into the humid downpour. The rain was torrential, turning the dirt yard into a soup of red mud. But sitting there, impervious to the filth, were 3 black Range Rovers with tinted windows. They looked like alien spacecrafts landed in the jungle. A man in a black raincoat stepped out of the lead vehicle. He opened a large umbrella and moved to the rear door of the middle car. Liam stopped 10 feet away, squinting against the rain. The door opened. A boot hit the mud. Italian leather ruined instantly. Then a man stepped out. He wore a linen suit that cost more than the entire inventory of the warehouse. He looked out of place, uncomfortable and utterly wealthy. It was Dominic Vance. Liam felt the air leave his lungs. For 2 years he had wondered if this day would come. He had rehearsed speeches. He had rehearsed anger. He had rehearsed begging. But now that the moment was here, he just felt tired. "Dominic," Liam said, his voice flat. Dominic Vance looked at Liam. He didn't sneer. He didn't laugh. He looked at the grease on Liam's face, the scars on his hands, the way he stood grounded, not posturing. "Liam," Dominic replied, his voice barely audible over the rain. You're hard to find. The GPS coordinates for this place are practically non-existent. That's the point, Liam said. What are you doing here, Vance? You come to fire me personally. You can do that over email. Dominic shook his head, a small enigmatic smile playing on his lips. No. Efficiency reports came in last week. This distribution hub is outperforming the Manila and Jakarta branches by 40%. Spoilage is down to near zero. The Ministry of Health is sending commendations. Dominic stepped closer, sheltered by the umbrella held by his guard. I came because my wife wanted to see it. My wife. The words hung in the heavy air. The rear door on the other side of the car opened. No guard moved to help this time. The passenger didn't wait. She stepped out into the rain, ignoring the mud that splashed against the hem of her trousers. Sienna. She wasn't wearing the emerald gown from the restaurant. She wasn't wearing the office armor of the boardroom. She wore khaki cargo pants, a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and heavy work boots. Her hair was pulled back in a severe practical braid. She wore no makeup, and the humidity had caused a few strands of hair to curl around her temples. She looked older, sharper, and more beautiful than Liam had ever seen her. She walked around the car, her eyes locking onto Liam's. There was no hesitation in her stride. She walked right up to him, invading his personal space, ignoring the rain soaking her shirt. "Hello, Liam," she said. Her voice was the same, soft, melodic, but the steel underneath was undeniable. "Sienna," Liam breathed. He felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to straighten his shirt, to wipe the grease from his face, to hide. But there was nowhere to go. You came all this way for a site inspection." "I came to see if my investment paid off," she said coolly. She looked past him toward the open maw of the warehouse. "Show me the cold chain storage. I want to see how you solved the humidity condensation issue on the intake valves." Liam blinked, stunned. You want to see the valves?" "I read your report, Liam. The mesmerizing workaround you engineered using the dehumidifiers from the grain silos. It was clever. I want to see it." She didn't wait for an answer. She walked past him, marching into the warehouse as if she owned the very ground it stood on, which Liam realized with a jolt she essentially did. The next hour was surreal. Liam found himself walking Sienna Vance through the stacks of medical supplies. She didn't walk like a tourist. She walked like an auditor. She checked manifests. She ran her finger along the seals of the cooling units. She spoke to Hung in broken but functional Vietnamese, asking about delivery times. Dominic stayed back near the entrance, chatting idly with a security guard, looking bored by the logistics but amused by the scene. Finally, Sienna stopped in a quiet corner of the warehouse near the rear loading dock, where the rain created a curtain of water falling from the eaves. The noise of the workers was distant here. She turned to Liam. Her gaze was dissecting him, peeling back the layers. "You look terrible, Liam," she said, but there was no malice in it, just observation. "I work for a living now," Liam replied, his defenses rising slightly. "It takes a toll. We don't have spa days here." "I don't mean you look ugly," she corrected. "I mean you look worn. Real. You used to look like a mannequin. Plastic skin, plastic smile, plastic words." She reached out, almost touching his arm, but stopped. "You look like a human being." Liam let out a short, bitter laugh. "Is that why you came to gloat, to see the human living in squalor?" "You call this squalor." She gestured to the warehouse. "This hub saves 3,000 lives a month, Liam. You are managing a supply chain that the UN called impossible to stabilize. You aren't living in squalor. You're living in relevance." Liam leaned against a crate, crossing his arms. "Why did you give me this job, Sienna? You destroyed me in New York. You took the company, the reputation, the money. You left me for dead. And then a job offer. Was it pity?" Sienna's eyes flashed. She took a step closer, the smell of rain and expensive soap radiating from her. "It wasn't pity," she said firmly. It was a test. A test. I knew you were a narcissist, Liam, but I also knew you were brilliant at logistics. The problem was, your brilliance was suffocated by your need to be worshipped. You couldn't do the work because you were too busy trying to be the work. She paused, watching the rain fall. When I took over Sterling & Co., I realized that firing you wasn't enough. If I just fired you, you would have spun a narrative. You would have been the victim. You would have found another Tiffany, another Leach, and started the cycle over. I needed to break you. Truly break you. I needed to strip away the audience so you had to face the mirror. Liam felt a lump form in his throat. You succeeded. And then, she continued, I wanted to see what was left. If I gave you a task that had zero glamour, zero recognition, but required 100% of your brain, would you do it, or would you fold? She looked at him with a strange expression. Pride. No, it was validation. You didn't fold, Liam. You built this. Liam looked down at his boots. The anger he had held on to for 2 years began to evaporate, leaving only a hollow clarity. I didn't have a choice, Sienna. I had nothing else. You always have a choice, she whispered. You could have quit. You could have drunk yourself to death. You stayed. There was a silence between them, heavy and filled with the ghosts of their past. Tell me something, Liam asked, his voice quiet. Dominic, does he know what? That you're the one running the show. I saw the Forbes article, the silent partner. But watching you two, it's not just that you're the CEO, it's something else. Sienna smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes, softening the hard angles of her face. Dominic hates business, Liam. He despises it. She leaned back against a stack of pallets. When I met Dominic, he was drowning. He had inherited this massive conglomerate from his father, and he was being eaten alive by his board of directors. He wanted to be a writer. He wanted to travel. He wanted to fund libraries and clean water projects. But he was shackled to the boardroom. He was miserable. Liam watched her, fascinated. This was the missing piece of the puzzle. I didn't seduce a billionaire to get his money, Sienna said fiercely. I offered him a trade. I told him, I will fight your wars. I will balance your books. I will slit the throats of the competitors trying to bleed you dry. I will run the empire so you don't have to. And in exchange, he gave me the keys. She gestured toward the front of the warehouse where Dominic was laughing at something a worker said, completely unconcerned with profit margins or efficiency reports. He trusts me explicitly. I am the chairwoman. I make the decisions. He signs the checks and shakes the hands. We are partners in the truest sense. He gave me power. I gave him freedom. Liam stared at her, the realization crashing over him like a wave. He had always assumed she was a gold digger, a woman who had traded up. He was wrong. She hadn't climbed the ladder. She had become the structural engineer. I underestimated you, Liam said. God, I underestimated you. Not just your skill, but your ambition. You didn't underestimate me, Liam, she said softly. You didn't see me at all. You saw a reflection of yourself. You thought I was your assistant because you needed an assistant. You never stopped to ask if I was actually the architect. She checked her watch, a simple, durable field watch, not the diamond-encrusted Cartier she used to wear to galas. We have to go. The jet leaves for Singapore in 2 hours. We're acquiring a shipping line there. She pushed off the crate and began to walk away. Sienna! Liam called out. She stopped and turned. Liam swallowed hard. I'm sorry. He didn't need to say what for. It wasn't just for the cheating. It wasn't for the breakup. It was for the years he had treated her mind as a resource to be mined rather than a garden to be watered. Sienna looked at him for a long moment. The rain thundered on the roof, loud and relentless. I know, she said, and Liam, yeah, the raise you requested for your local staff, I approved it this morning. Retroactive. She walked back out into the rain. Liam followed her to the edge of the bay. He watched as she approached the SUV. Dominic saw her coming and immediately opened the door for her. But the dynamic was unmistakable now. He didn't open it like a man helping a delicate flower. He opened it with the reverence of a knight serving his queen. Before she got in, Dominic looked back at Liam and gave a small wave, a salute of sorts. Acknowledgement from the man who had the title to the man who did the work, orchestrated by the woman who controlled them both. The heavy doors slammed shut. The convoy of Range Rovers roared to life, their tires spinning in the red mud before gripping the road and tearing off toward the jungle highway. Liam stood there until they were gone, just a blur of red taillights in the gray storm. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't longing. It was relief. For years he had been terrified of being exposed as a fraud. He had lived in fear that people would find out he wasn't the genius he claimed to be. Now, standing in the mud, wearing dirty clothes with no audience and no applause, he realized he was finally doing something real. "Boss?" Liam turned. Hung was standing there holding the clipboard. "The truck for the Highlands is loaded. Driver wants to know if he can go. The storm is getting worse." Liam looked at the empty road where Sienna had vanished, then looked at the truck filled with vaccines. "Tell him to wait 5 minutes." Liam said, his voice strong, authoritative, and his own. "I want to check the tie-downs myself. We're not losing a single crate on my watch." "Yes, boss." Liam Calloway walked back into the warehouse, into the noise and the heat. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a victor. But as he picked up the strap and pulled it tight, feeling the tension hold, he knew he was finally, for the first time in his life, a man. He had lost the game, but he had survived the lesson. And in the silence of the warehouse, that was victory enough. And that is where we leave Liam and Sienna. It's a complicated ending, isn't it? Usually in these stories, we want the villain to rot in jail or lose everything. But Sienna did something far more interesting. She didn't just destroy Liam. She dismantled him and rebuilt him into something useful. She proved that the ultimate flex isn't just holding hands with a billionaire, it's becoming the person who holds the keys to the empire. She found a partner in Dominic who valued her mind, not just her appearance, and together they flipped the script on everyone who doubted them. So here's the question of the day, and I really want to see your answers in the comments. If you were Sienna, would you have offered Liam that job? Was it an act of mercy, or was it the ultimate power move to make him work for her? Personally, I think it was the perfect revenge. She made him find his worth in the one thing he tried to steal from her hard work. If you enjoyed this saga of betrayal, business, and sweet, sweet karma, please crush that like button. It helps the algorithm share this story with more people. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a drop. We have a crazy story coming up next week about a lottery winner who kept it secret from his wife for 10 years. Until she found the ticket, you won't want to miss it. Until then, stay sharp, know your worth, and never let anyone treat you like an assistant when you're the CEO.